No, because that's so thematically rich. Fuck, man. I think that analyzing this sequence and this episode is a group project. So this is my part. I'm presenting my notes to you. This is what I've seen, and please do with that what you will. We're gonna break down the scene shot by shot. There are 105 shots in this sequence. This is not meant to be a completed analysis or interpretation. This is more of indexing everything I can find. Just throwing everything out there, saying this is what I see. The best way to view this, in my opinion, is to have a specific hypothesis or theory or question that you want to analyze different shots looking at. In the chapters, I'll list general sections of shots or, anything that I go into specific detail on, and find the specific part that you want to look at. Some of the things that interest me in this scene that I want to go back and look at and maybe do a full analysis on are the use of biblical imagery and concepts, the source of light and the use of light. So whether that's light from buildings, headlights, firelight, and cool light versus warm light. But if you would like to just, see all of my thoughts and see my brain slowly melting as I go through the scene, you're also welcome to do that. And hopefully that's entertaining. So this is a full shot. If he was standing, you could see about his full body, but they're sitting. We pull forward and we're roughly matching his hand that is pulling out the diary pages. So we're roughly following the movement of his hand as we pull forward. We're coming closer to the action. It looks to me like a slight high angle. We're just looking down a little bit at, on both Bruce and Louis. So the viewer is given kind of a superiority in this shot. We have blue light coming from the left side, and we hear the bag rustling. There's no dialogue in this shot, and we can see the brick basement, the TV on the left, the flooring is very reflective. The most interesting thing to me in this shot is this rogue warm tone light, which is framed directly above Bruce's head. It kind of reminds me of an interrogation bulb. They're both sitting. Louis hovers slightly over Bruce. Bruce's face is visible, but Louis' isn't. Which kind of puts us in the position to interrogate Bruce with Louis. Our second shot is 3 seconds, and it is a close-up not on the diary pages, but on Louis' bloody hand reaching for the diary pages. We tilt down, and we're following the movement of his hand in this shot. The light is concentrated on the bag and the diary pages themselves. We have some more, high tones in the score. The bag rustling as the diary pages come out. We have Louis' blood-streaked shirt and neck. We have his gold chain necklace, his bloody hand opening the bag and taking out the pages. Cut to a medium close-up, which was interesting to me because we have a closer shot on Louis' bloody hand than we do on his face. It's not emphasizing Louis' interiority, but his actions. His hand gets the close-up, his face just gets the medium close-up. One of the main ideas of the scene is this blurring of the lines between predator and prey, or predator and victim. And the scene really shows that from the beginning with Louis, who is our main voice of the scene, in terms of giving voice to the interiority which the scene is trying to convey via Claudia's diary pages. And he's the one that we start the scene on. And even so, he is depicted as facing away from the audience, facing away from the light, literally reaching for the diary pages with his bloody hands. He's literally red-handed. Obviously, every situation that they're looking at in this scene has an abuser and then a victim of that situation. And also, every single person in these scenes is a predator in some form. And looking at abuse among vampires and the inseparability of a person's victimization from their predation. So that begins all the way from the opening shots of Louis. It looks to me like a slight low angle, so this one is putting us in the position of Bruce, you know, looking up just slightly at Louis. The brightest light, which is a warm light, is behind Louis. As I said in my reaction to episode 1, you know, and the light is coming from behind him. Guys, he's turned away from the light. We're fucked. There's a secondary blue light that hits the right side of his face. The bag drops, the paper crinkles, and then we have more of that score. And Louis says, "You and I have a friend in common."
You and I have a friend in common.
We see the papers on the wall behind him, and there's blood covering his clothes. And then we cut to Lestat. So we have a medium close-up on Lestat's profile. He is facing ahead. As he looks back, he faces the camera to look back. The part where we get his full interiority is as he looks at what is behind him, as, you know, he is starting to look at his past. It's a handheld, and we pan to the wine. It kind of tilts down just slightly, so we're looking down on the wine, just like Lestat is looking down at the wine. And we have bright light from outside the car, specifically from his right side. He is separated from that light by the glass of the window. You know, the car, it creates a very, like, enclosed space. So he can view the world, but he is inherently separated from it. The wine bottle is also out of focus. And then we can hear the car engine, and we hear Magnus ask, "More wine?"
More wine? Cool.
Lestat is driving, and a hand offers a bottle from the passenger seat. And then we cut to another 5-second shot, which is a medium close-up on Lestat, but Lestat is out of focus. The focus is on Magnus holding the wine bottle. We have a rack focus from Magnus to Lestat. The light is coming from behind him, and it gives this from behind Lestat, not from behind Magnus. It is specifically from behind Lestat, and it creates this kind of like halo effect on his hair, which I think is interesting. You know, Magnus could be interpreted as like the devil on his shoulder. Like on one side we have the light, and on the other side is Magnus. Kind of fun. It's a handheld shot, so it gives it a little bit of a shake. Yeah, we get the light from behind Lestat, and it kind of lights half of his face. It lights like this half of his face. And this half of his face, the side near Magnus, is in shadows. Makes sense. It looks to me like a straight-on shot. Magnus says, "Cold tea, they call it here, I hear."
Tea, they call it here, I hear. Apple.
Magnus drinks from the bottle. Magnus is a vampire. That means that it is blood, presumably. I mean, obviously Magnus isn't actually there, but presumably what is in the bottle and being referred to as wine in the context of the car scene is blood. And so when he offers more wine, the thing that he is offering isn't actually wine, it's blood. And now I'm screaming because the two things that Lestat sells with the failures narration is a bottle of port wine and a bottle of blood. And like, Magnus is holding the bottle, and Lestat is turned, you know, we see his profile as he's turned towards Magnus, and then he turns back to the front. Okay, so he says apples, and we hear Lestat's breathing. Lestat later recites a prayer, and so when Magnus says apples, the first thing that I think of is like Adam and Eve, like the forbidden fruit, the apple of like temptation or damnation. You know, and especially the fact that he offers the bottle of blood to Lestat and then immediately compares it to apples feels very biblical to me. Lestat starts the shot, like, turned towards him. When he turns back to follow, you know, the blood, what does he see? He sees Magnus. He sees, you know, as he is tempted by that blood, by the, you know, apple, but whenever he turns towards it, you know, he sees the predation that was done to him, that was inflicted on him. Oh, this next shot is so fun. Oh, I love it. Okay, so then we cut to a 2-second shot, Lestat's profile, the light coming from this side. that medium close-up again. It's a handheld shot, so again, gives it a little bit of shake. You know, Lestat in focus, lights passing by outside, you know, the light of the world passing him by. Like, half of his face is lit, but the part of his face that is lit is, we can't see it. We are seeing the half of his face that is in shadows. So, you know, you have that shot where it's like, on one side is the light, on the other side is Magnus. We are seeing the Magnus side. That shot kind of is the epitome of this episode, isn't it? You're so perfect in the raging light. The side of him that's in the light, that's the side that he performs. It's you know, he's so perfect. And we are seeing the darkness now. We are seeing the Magnus. We are seeing the side that is in the shadows. We have again, like, you know, those strings in the back. Magnus says, with a hint of.
It's with the hint of.
And then we have this wonderful, just like it's so good. Oh, look at that. Look at that, just like head tilt. Like, what is it this time? Oh, I love that. So fun. So we cut to a 1 second shot of the rear view mirror with Magnus in it that creates this artificial Dutch angle. You know, the Dutch angle is like this. And we have that Dutch angle created by the rear view mirror. Oh, when I saw that shot, I was like, that's amazing. I love that shot so much. So fun. Mirrors and glass are like very evocative in film and in TV because mirror is like the reflection, what you see. It is, you know, can be like your perception of yourself, or, you know, it speaks a lot to perception. And then glass speaks a lot to like separation, but then also like broken glass can be violent, and like broken mirrors can be very like a broken perception or a distorted perception. The movie that like I think of the most when I think of like mirrors in film is Sweeney Todd. They use a lot of like broken glass and like broken mirrors and his reflection in like the blades. Here, Lestat is literally looking at his past in the rearview mirror. So in the rearview mirror, it creates this great shot though. Love that shot. Oh, it's so good because you can see the world passing him by. You know, they're using space to indicate time. They're using the world passing him by physically to show like the rush of time going past him. So fun. So the world is passing him by, but there is just this intrusion of the past. It's uneasy. It's so, such a fun shot. I love it so much. If Magnus took up the entire frame, it would be a medium shot, but so it kind of has like a medium shot framing, even though we only see his face. So Magnus is in focus. It's a low angle. We're looking up at the lights. We're looking up at the rear view mirror, but it is also a Dutch angle because, you know, Magnus is tilted to the side. So fun. I love that shot so much. I love it. The brightest lights are not coming from inside the car. Again, the brightest lights are coming from outside the car, from the world around them that they are moving through but not a part of. Very vampiric. There's a lot of use of windows in the sequences that I've analyzed of this show, which makes a lot of sense for vampires, you know, looking out at the world but not a part of it. Magnus has cowardice and he kind of laughs.
Cowardice.
So the full line is apples with a hint of cowardice. Temptation of vampirism, of predation with a hint of cowardice. Cut back to that medium close-up. We have Lestat in focus. This is a 2 second shot. Now the light behind Lestat separates him from Magnus. Now the light is between them. It is still behind him. It's not in front of him. He can't see it, but it is behind him. It's separating him. It's, you know, he has this level of protection from Magnus by the light. Again, we have like high tones in the score, kind of like an eerie, you know, off-putting, like high violins. And Lestat says, still in rags.
Still in rags.
Then we cut to a 3 second shot. Magnus is in focus. He is sitting beside Lestat. Would we call this a medium shot? Would we call it a medium shot or a medium close-up? Lestat is closer to the camera than Magnus. But Magnus is in focus. So we are like closer to Lestat, but we are looking at Magnus. You know, we just kind of get the movement of the car. So again, you know, a little bit of shake, but the camera isn't really moving. Magnus says, is this better?
Is this better?
again, the world passing them by. They are closed off from the world. They can see it, but not be a part of it. Magnus appears next to him, and he is now in a white t-shirt. He's wearing the trappings of the modern. Oh my gosh! I didn't even realize. Guys, the t-shirt that he's wearing has a Vampire Lestat logo on it. It's his merchandise. No! No! No, because that's so thematically rich. Fuck, man. No, because it ties so many of the themes that they're looking at together, and that makes me actually have to think and do my job. Fuck! God damn it! No! Guys, why did you have to make a good show? Well, shit. You could do literally anything with that. That is so rich for thematic analysis. And that's what Lestat looks down at. He looks at Magnus and then he looks at the logo. One thing that I just kind of want to like throw out there that maybe, you know, we'll play with a little bit more later on is the idea of like continuity editing, which is basically when you're trying to edit shots together so that it creates a seamless temporal space. So like, you know, so like if a character starts a turn in one shot, then we cut to a shot of them completing the turn in the next shot. And it basically is trying to like make the editing invisible. But if a movement isn't completed between shots, or a movement is started and then abruptly stopped in the cut, then that would be like them breaking continuity edit, you know, or deliberately not doing continuity editing, which is just something that I want to like throw out there. Lestat's movements, where Lestat moves his head, and you know, those are still following continuity editing. So it separates Lestat from Magnus spatially, even though they are inhabiting the same space. Lestat is still operating within the mode of reality, whereas, you know, Magnus is bouncing all around Lestat's psyche. We cut to that same shot of Lestat, you know, we're closer to Lestat than to Magnus consistently, which is good. No one wants to be close to Magnus. You know, looking towards the shadows. Looking towards the shadows, he's looking at Magnus. The lighting again coming from Lestat's left, but, you know, what if we were looking at him, it would be the right side of the frame. Lestat says, "Same face, same smell. No hope for you, Father Mags."
Same face, same smell. No hope for you, Father Mags.
Which again, you know, connects. This scene has there's a lot of religious imagery in this scene. Not just him saying the prayer, but all throughout the scene, he literally calls him Father Mags. He has a paternal relationship to Lestat, just in terms of the fact that he is Lestat's maker. This dark priest that brings Lestat into vampirism, into his vampiric existence. Which is, you know, has this kind of ickiness with the fact that, you know, the vampiric transformation is so sexually coded. Icky, icky, icky. And then turns to face the front. Again, you know, not looking at this darkness, looking ahead, trying to avoid it with everything that he can. Then we cut to a 4-second shot. When we cut back to the same shot, I'm gonna give a little bit less time to like the lighting and the shot length and focus more on like what is different, what has changed, because, you know, there's no need to rehash things that we've already talked about.
Not exactly forthcoming, the vampire journalist.
And then we cut to a 2-second shot. Ooh, tricky, tricky, tricky. Look at this.
Left out of
The car behind them switches lanes. It moves a little bit, and suddenly that bright, bright light that was separating Lestat from Magnus goes away. Tricky, tricky, tricky. Beautiful, beautiful. That is really striking. I love it so much. I love this show. Magnus is the one that is in focus. So what is the line that makes that light go away?
Not exactly forthcoming, the vampire journalist. Left out a few prickly details.
Him recognizing his own deception and his own self-deception is the thing that makes that protection go away. It's the thing that makes that light go away. God, they're so good at their jobs. Okay. Left out a few prickly is what we get of dialogue in that shot. We cut to another 1 second shot, close-up of Lestat, as Magnus says, prickly details. Makes him jerk the wheel, scrunches up his face. New shot! New shot just dropped. New shot means that, you know, the emotionality of the scene is moving forward, so new shots are very, very exciting. What would we call this? Would we call this a full shot? So we are pulling back, we are looking at the outside world, we are looking at the outside effects. You know, this is our first shot not within the confines of the car. This is the outside world. Lestat swerving and changing lanes. So true! So true! You know, and we have the light of his headlights. We see the light that he is projecting, and we are seeing him swerving, but it's because of the trauma that's going on the inside. Ain't that the truth? The brightest sources of lights are from his headlights and the headlights of the car behind him, and he swerves, cuts them off, so he's cutting off the lights of the things around him. So true. He is pushing past us also. We are in like a car in front of him, and he is swerving around us. He's going past us, leaving us behind. We hear the engine revving up. We cut back to Lestat inside the car, Lestat in focus. That shot kind of twisted my stomach a little bit. He is bathed in light now. He is going towards it. He is just going towards the light as fast as he can. You know, there's the light behind him, there's the light in front of him. You know, this is his, like, last attempt at, like, I am just moving towards the light. I'm ignoring this. I'm, you know, ignoring it completely. And that's when Magnus leans forward. You know, the light completely fades away. You know, he is engulfed in darkness. All of the light is just behind him. He is driving away from it. In going as fast as he can, he is leaving that light behind. We are engulfed in shadows. Magnus leans forward. He moves his hand forward. Look at that. Look at the way that his hand, Magnus's hand in the back, it lines up exactly with Lestat's hand on the front. Oh, I don't like it. I don't like that. I mean, I love it. And Magnus's hand goes like this. So, like, if you look, he's reaching for Lestat's hand, and even though he can't actually touch Lestat, it's like he's touching his hand. I hate it. I love it. It's so good. On this day, everyone was like, we have a job to do, and they fucking did it. Holy shit. I hate it. I want to crawl out of my skin. We rack focus from Lestat to Magnus as the light disappears from the scene, you know. We start on Lestat and in the light, and then we rack focus to Magnus. Magnus is in focus, but he is in shadows. Even as Lestat presses on the gas and tries to leave the past behind as fast as he can, Magnus is there saying, you forgot to put your blinkers on, and now the past is reaching for you once again.
Uh-oh. You forgot to put your blinkers on.
Are we starting the fucked up part of the scene? Okay. Then we cut back to that close-up of Lestat, and Magnus's hand physically grabbing the back of Lestat's head, pulling him back, and then slamming him down towards the steering wheel, breaking of the separation between past and present. The past literally reaching for him and forcing him back into it. And we are back in the tower. It is a straight-on shot, but Lestat is on the floor. You know, we are on the floor with him. His face is pressed to the floor. There's very minimal light in this shot. The light is coming from above or like behind him. Above him physically, but behind him in terms of the framing of the shot. What's the name of the shot where... What is it called when a shot in film is sideways? If someone knows what the name of that is called, please let me know, because I don't remember. I can't figure it out. And the internet is not giving me the information that I want it to. There's just a little bit of shake to it, but no actual movement. Lestat is the one being thrown around. We are standing still. If I dissociate a little bit while I'm talking, you get it, right? You get it. We get the sound of the impact, we get some low strings. Lestat is in a light shirt. He's wearing a reddish brown in the shot before, which feels like a contrast, a direct contrast to him in the scene with the tower where he's wearing white. He's wearing like a dirtied white shirt. And Magnus is wearing dark clothes. You know, Magnus is the darkness. Lestat in the car, he's not the darkness, you know, like Magnus is, but there is, you know, there's a lack of innocence, a lack of purity. Don't think about it too hard. Or do. I mean, this is a shot-by-shot breakdown, but, you know, don't let it affect you. When we have Lestat in the white shirt, I think of him in the finale of season 1, especially there's a shot of him later that really reminds me of his eyes moving from side to side, it wearing white and covered in blood. Elements of this feel like a direct callback to that. And we have Magnus's hand reaching for Lestat's shoulder, pulling him back up. So the impact sound, and we have some lower strings. Small creatures make high sounds, and the like low notes are like bigger objects make lower sounds. There are these little like horizontal wooden fence thing that kind of looks a little bit like prison bar-ish to me. And especially then we also have the like vertical lines of the flooring. Feels very like prison bar, very like closed in, confining. And then we cut to a 1 second shot of him being thrown to the ground. It starts as a straight on and tilts to a Dutch angle when he is thrown. The camera tilts as he is thrown. It's a very, very dark shot. There's a blue light that's hitting Lestat, and then there's a warm light that is hitting like the side of his face right here. And like his hair, we hear the impact. Looks to me like a medium full shot. We cut to a 4 second shot and we get a second impact. So we have that impact repeating itself. That would be the first place that we kind of have, you know, that continuity editing breaking, because we see the impact of that fall once and then we see it again. So it is either replaying the events, you know, it is creating like, you know, an event that reverberates and plays again in your mind, or then there's missing time. You know, it's kind of like time that's been blacked out. And the use of continuity, of breaking the continuity editing, to me in this scene very much like evokes the way that your mind kind of fragments time in trauma. We have the corpses in the back and Lestat wearing white. My brain supplied the wonderful thought of, you know, if Louis' turning is referenced like a wedding night, well, here Lestat is wearing white. Like, marriages take place on an altar, which was like historically a place of like sacrifice, and so what is being sacrificed at a wedding? Well, the offering is the bride, you know, the one wearing white. So Lestat as this like sacrificial bride on her wedding night. Fresh horror. Thought I'd share. And him backing away from Magnus. I think it's a slight high angle, like we're looking down just a little bit at Lestat as he is like backing away. We're not positioned on eye level with him. We're a little bit leaning over him. You know, it's further emphasizing his lack of power in the shot. Backing away into the shadows, you know, in trying to get away from Magnus, he is going further and further into the darkness. But Magnus comes after him. Magnus's hands reach down. You know, it's not a fade to black, but in Magnus reaching for Lestat and reaching for that white shirt, which is the brightest point that we have in the shot, it creates like, not a fade to black, but dark, like blackness does engulf the camera. And it is like effectively, like it's not a fade to black, but it is like effectively a fade to black. Strings in score tend to usually like denote like emotion. And Nikki is a violin player, so there's also that. And Louis says Bruce walked back from the fire, you know, as we see Lestat backing away. Interesting, the language used to describe the abuser in Claudia's diary pages matches the action of the victim in Lestat's tower flashback, which is fun because Lestat is emotionally abusive to Claudia. And so Lestat does mirror and does parallel both Claudia, the victim of assault, and Bruce, the perpetrator of Claudia's abuse. Very fun, and by fun, I mean emotionally devastating.
Bruce walked back from the fire.
I have to go to work. I have to go now, so I need to change. But we got through the first minute of 5.5 minutes, and it only took me an hour and a half, which is pretty good. I've returned from work, and I am ready to resume analyzing this goddamn sequence of television. All right. Our next shot is 5 seconds. It's a medium shot. We pan to the right. It looks to me like a straight ahead shot. Again, maybe tilted a little bit up towards Louis. So this is a new shot then. Our last shot of Louis was a close-up, and this one is a medium shot. We are distancing ourselves from Louis, we are pulling away from him. We are not interested in Louis's interiority in this scene. The brightest light that we have is behind Louis. We don't see it. We have a bunch of photos of Lestat hanging on the walls. And one looks like Lestat hanging upside down with his shirt ripped. And you can see his bare chest. Given the Magnus tower scene, that feels very pointed. All of the shots of Louis literally has Lestat in the background. And Louis is reading Claudia's diary pages. It reminds me of that line that Lestat has when he says to Claudia, "It was never you." And isn't that just the tragedy of Claudia's life? All of these circumstances, all of these things in her life that she has to deal with, and none of them are ever about her. And even here, her trauma being read aloud and talked about, and whose face is plastered all behind them, even as we're talking about it, Lestat. And whose flashbacks are intercut with it, Lestat. It's not a criticism, just, I think that that's the point, but it hurts. Louis is lit from the front, there's a side of him that's in shadows, but he's mostly in the light here. The brightest light of the frame is on the photos of Lestat. Louis is in focus, all of the stuff with Lestat is out of focus, Bruce is out of focus. Louis is covered in blood in front of the images of Lestat. We have those low strings again, and he says, "Leaned down over me, and for a second I thought I was gonna go right there."
Leaned down over me, and for a second I thought I was gonna go right there.
Then we have this medium close-up of Bruce. He says Louis Dupont du Lac. And we move left on the shot of him. So we move right on the shot of Louis. We move left on the shot of Bruce. The light behind Bruce is flickering. On the left side of the frame, Bruce has light on his face, but the main side that we see is the side that's more in shadows. He's wearing a shirt with Hawaiian flowers, it looks like. It looks like we're angled a little bit down. It's a little bit of a high angle. We're just slightly looking down on Bruce. Bruce is in focus. We have those strings in the back. Louis says, "But no," and Bruce says, "Louis Dupont du Lac."
But no.
Louis Dupont du Lac.
That's an armchair in the back. The red thing, Bruce is seated in an armchair, and earlier we see Louis is on a dining chair. And that shot of Bruce is 3 seconds. Then we have a 1 second shot of Louis. We go back to that close-up from before. We have that light back on the left side of the frame. The camera that's on Louis, again, moving to the right, so Bruce's head getting closer to Louis in the frame. So Louis says, "He plunked me onto his motorbike," and then Bruce says, "Wow."
He on his motorbike.
Wow.
So we have a little reverse shot, so we have that shot of Bruce, shot of Louis, back to that shot of Bruce. He says, "Come to my house," and Louis says, "Switched into his friendly self." And that's when we have Lestat starting to say the prayer. So switch back into his friendly self. We cut back to Lestat, and he starts saying the prayer. Those same 2 shots that we just looked at. The lines where we are looking at Louis are, "He leaned over me, and for a moment I thought I was going to go right there. But no, he plunked me onto his motorbike and switched back into his friendly self." And the line that we are looking at Lestat for is, "Bruce walked back from the fire." And like, even as they're reading the pages and talking about the assault that happened to Claudia, the only thing that Bruce can comment on is, wow, Louis Dupont de Lac came to my house. You know, even now, the focus is not on Claudia. The focus for Bruce is on the fact that Louis Dupont de Lac is in his house. Claudia catching strays left and right.
And switched into his friendly self.
So our next shot is a close-up of Lestat's face, and we are outside of the car now. Lestat is inside the car. We can, see the reflection of the world moving past him through the window. We are outside of the window. He is closed in away from us. The Lord's right hand is lifted high. The Lord's right hand is. That's what he says as, we see the world passing by him. So, and we are in close-up, and yet we cannot reach him because we are separated by that glass. And we see his profile, he is looking straight ahead. The way that they're depicting Magnus's presence is very to this side and behind him. He's looking straight ahead, trying to ignore it, trying to get away from those memories. Yeah, we can't reach him. We are looking at him in profile. The two brightest lights in the shot are the buildings passing him by, the lights outside passing him by, and then the lights in his eyes. That light in his eye, the thing that I think of is the prayer that he's saying. Yeah, the Lord's right hand is lifted high, that faith, that prayer being that light in his eyes. He's crawling across the floorboards. He is crawling towards the light. We have this warm light in front of him to the right side of frame that he is crawling towards. He's crawling from the left to the right towards that light, trying to reach the light. It's much dimmer, but there's a kind of halo effect going on with his hair because there's another source of light behind him, and he's crawling towards a brighter source of light or towards another source of light, which is on the right side of frame, which is in front of him. So he finishes, is my strength and salvation. Shouts of joy and victory resound from, and we have those lines of dialogue as he is crawling, his hands clutching to every single floorboard in front of him. And we are put at eye level with him. Looking at him now, it's a straight on shot where he's crawling across the ground. We are crawling across the ground as well. We hear his palms hitting the floorboards.
Shouts of joy and victory resound.
And then he's crawling towards us. Medium close-up that moves into a close-up as he gets closer. The camera is handheld. We are not moving towards him. He is moving towards us. Those high strings coming back, the thing that I'm noticing is that the low strings started coming in once we started talking about the actual perpetrators. He leaned down over me, and once we started looking at the actual traumatic events, and then those high strings we had from the beginning when we were just talking about, or when we were just looking at a friend in common, or, looking at Lestat trying to move away from that abuse. So the high strings, to me, I noticed more of a connection with, victims of these situations. At the low strings that came in once we started talking about, the perpetrators, Bruce leaned over me. And here we have both of them, both the high and low strings playing at the same time. Starting from that shot of Lestat in close-up. And the high strings are speeding up, which feels kind of like that, increased anxiety, that increased, panic of everything happening. The high strings, coming faster and faster, while the low strings very steady. We see again those vertical bars in the back behind him in the shot there. We see this blue window. It looks either like stained glass or like a barred window. It's out of focus, so it's hard to tell for me. It's a stone room, it looks like. And we see Magnus moving towards Lestat, out of focus in the back of the shot. He's speaking about the Lord's right hand as he's literally crawling, and his hands are in the foreground of the frame. We have the 1 second shot of Magnus saying no. Close-up of Magnus in the t-shirt as a light goes past him. So in the literal scene with the car is, buildings going past them, but in the context of him saying prayers, it feels very, like the light of God. Very biblical. So Magnus being illuminated in the light of God, which he is looking towards Lestat. He is looking towards the driver's seat where Lestat is sitting, and the light is directly on his face coming from the window of outside the driver's side. Feels very much like the light emanating off of Lestat, the light of God emanating off of Lestat, illuminates Magnus. Magnus says no. What's the line that he says no to? And the Lord's right hand has done mighty things is the line that Magnus says no to. And when he says the Lord's right hand has done mighty things, that's when he is pulled back towards Magnus. Not physically pulled back, I think pulled back telepathically, because Magnus doesn't look like he's actually holding on to Lestat at all there. So we start in an extreme close-up, entirely out of focus. Maybe just like a few strands of blonde hair are in focus, if anything. And then he is pulled out of the focus, and then we move the focus back as he is pulled away. And then we have that same shot. Instead of it being of his full face, the extreme close-up is instead specifically on his mouth. Before, the brightest light had been the light of his eyes, but now we see the lights outside passing by still, and we see the light reflecting on his lip and on the tip of his tongue, where he's saying those prayers. Again, we have everything rushing by outside him. We are on the outside of the car window. He's trying to say, the line that gets interrupted is, the Lord's right hand has done mighty things. I will not die, but live, and will proclaim what the Lord has done. Ow, will not die, but will live and proclaim what the Lord has done. And that's why I will not die, but will live and proclaim what the Lord has done. Oh, they're fucked up for this. They are fucked up for this, because look, the next shot, Magnus says, no more of that in my presence, and then he leans down, and what do we see? That bright light, that light of God, which is behind Magnus, that light of God, that everything that Magnus did to Lestat was in God's plan. That's fucked up. That's fucked up! That's fucked up! That is fucked up. What is he saying? I will live and proclaim what the Lord has done. He lived and proclaims what the Lord did to him, what the Lord let happen to him. What the Lord has done, the Lord turned him into a vampire. The Lord let Magnus steal his humanity and turn him into a vampire, and God let that happen. It's fucked up! Oh, it's so good. And then we hear a hiss, and then we hear a bite at the same time that we have the light of God.
Back in my presence!
Cut to, this was the most striking shot to me when I first watched it, was Lestat's hand in front of his face blocking the light from him. The light of God is shining on his face. It gives both like reaching for it, but also blocking it from hitting him. And there's light behind him as well. I see two things about this shot. So Magnus is saying, I will feed you to the wolves of hell. Lestat is saying, we'll live and proclaim what the Lord has done. The right hand of the Lord has done mighty things. Lestat is, in the beginning of this shot, bathed in light, except for, the handprint. Also, his hand up creates an entire handprint on his face. And that light fading away, him moving from being, enveloped in light to suddenly engulfed in darkness. There is still that light behind him. There's very little light on his face, but there is that light behind him that's kind of haloing him. And we rack focus from Lestat to Magnus.
But we'll live and proclaim what the Lord has done. The Lord's right hand has done mighty things.
I can't believe that I'm going through every single version of the Bible on BibleGateway.com trying to figure out which translation they use. I'm not even Christian. Maybe if I were Christian, I would know. He's reciting verses from Psalm 118 in both the tower flashback and in the car. But in the car, he is reciting verses 16 and 17. And in the Tower flashback, he is reciting verses 14 and 15. And what is it in the New International Version? I think that one is a little bit closer. This is the closest I can find is the New International Version. So for that, it's in the past, in the Tower flashback that he is reciting, "The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation," roughly. Because I think they say, "my strength and my salvation." Shouts of joy and victory resound in the tents of the righteous. Their translation has "from the tents of the righteous." In the car, he is reciting verses 16 and 17. "The Lord's right hand is lifted high. The Lord's right hand has done mighty things. I will not die, but live and will proclaim what the Lord has done." The New International Version was released in 1978. If he was using that version, he would have picked up a new copy of the Bible in 1978. So, Lestat, in the modern times, still picking up copies of the Bible. In English. Okay, so the King James Bible was, I think, the most common English version for many, many years. And that's not the version that they're using, I don't think. The King James Version translates the verses that he says in the Tower as, "The Lord is my strength and song, and is become my salvation. The voice of rejoicing and salvation is in the tabernacles of the righteous. The right hand of the Lord doeth valiantly." And then in the car scene, or the verses that he is reciting, "The right hand of the Lord is exalted. The right hand of the Lord doeth valiantly. I shall not die, but live and declare the works of the Lord." That's not the version that they use in the show. I do think it is the version that he would have known in English. Like, that was the English translation at the time. I can't blame them. Whenever I write Christian characters in period pieces and I have to use the King James Version, there's a lot of verses that I like in other translations, but then when I look at the King James Version, which is the version that those characters would have read, I'm like, I don't like that one, and then I have to find a new Bible verse, so I get it. I also am not a fan of the King James Version of the Bible. Psalm 118, verse 16, "The Lord's right hand is lifted high. The Lord's right hand has done mighty things." Instead, they jump back and they say, "The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation." So, it's not a direct quote. It is a quote which has been modified for the show. Or maybe Lestat just kind of forgot it. It's been like 20 years since he was in monastery school. He doesn't quite remember. I prefer to think that it was just modified for dialogue, that it was, condensed down for dialogue purposes, because I choose to believe that Lestat would know the correct Bible verse, and it would matter to him to say that. He says to Paul, he wanted to be a priest, just like you, Paul. Sorry, it's 4 a.m. He was Catholic, so they would have read the Bible in Latin, right? In the Latin version, the translation is significantly different. This is entirely different. Am I looking at different verses? Because the translation that I can find of the Latin, here, I'll take a screenshot of what I'm seeing. If someone is religious, and please let me know whether I'm looking at the right verses or not, because it says that I'm looking at Psalm 118, but it is entirely different. Do they have the Hebrew version? Can I see it in the original Hebrew? Let's look on Safaria. They mentioned religion, and I was like, yo, word, let's talk. Sorry, I love looking at religion and writing. It's like one of my favorite things to talk about. I love it so much. Okay, we're gonna use the New International Version for our English translation because it's the closest I could find to the one they use in the show. Shouts of joy and victory resound in the tents of the righteous. The Lord's right hand has done mighty things. The Lord's right hand is lifted high. The Lord's right hand has done mighty things. And that is a quote from Exodus 15:2, directly after the escape from Egypt. One translation of these verses reads, "The blazoning forth of the strength and the glory of the Lord was the cause of my salvation. The sound of song and salvation will be heard in the tents of the righteousness. The right hand of the Lord is victorious. The right hand of the Lord is uplifted. The right hand of the Lord is victorious." And this translation was made by Rabbi Shraga Silverstein. This is the only translation I've seen where it is listed as, will be heard in the future. It's not a present is heard, it's will be heard. It looks like the direct words are Oz v'zimrat. Oz is might or strength, which can be material or physical, or personal, social, or political. And zimrat is song of praise, song, melody, music. So interesting, it is the original Hebrew does refer to music in that line, but not the translation that they went with. The translation that they went with, they skipped the music part and they went straight to strength and deliverance, that word at the end, Yeshua, which translates to salvation, deliverance, welfare, prosperity, or victory. One thing that is kind of cool is that it's not actually the same verses that he said. It's not actually the same verses that he says in the tower and in the car. The ones that he says in the tower come before the ones that he says in the car. The ones that he says in the car are a direct continuation of the ones that he had said in the tower. So that's fun and heartbreaking. That's what I learned about Psalm 118 from episode 3 of the Vampire Lestat. Close-up of Lestat driving again. He turns back and we can see his face. The light is still behind him and he is turning towards that light. He is turning towards the light to scream back inside. So Magnus does live inside of Lestat. The version of Magnus that he carries with him, it keeps inside of his head.
Back inside!
Then we have this 4-second shot. He turns back, it's exactly 4 seconds, back to a close-up as he kind of tosses his hair back. That light again behind him, haloing him. There's a light that passes by him on the right side of his face, the side that's away from Magnus. And he says, "You got your song." His breathing very loud in the soundscape on that one.
You got your song.
That shot of Magnus and everything is passing him by. He turns and laughs. And on that shot of Magnus, we say, "But when we got to his house."
When we got to his house.
And then we cut back to Louis, literally Bruce's house. And Bruce says, "I guess my biggest question is," and Louis says, "I'm trying to get this down."
I guess my biggest question is why?
We have a little bit of reverse shot. Louis, Bruce, and then back to Louis.
Tracking me down now. I mean, we all read your little page turner.
And it's all gone dumb.
He says, "I guess my biggest question is, why are you tracking me down now? We all read your little page turner." And, Louis being the source of Claudia's commodification, even if he didn't intend for it to be a book, that he still profited off of it. Daniel says in the last episode that he opened up hotels, malls, other things that he says. Louis being one of the people that profits off of the commodification of his daughter's suffering, and then uses that suffering as justification to inflict revenge that he wants to inflict over other people that harmed her, because he can look at the harm that everyone caused her except for himself. That Claudia's words are literally being appropriated first by Louis in service of Louis's desire for vengeance, and also by the scene itself in narrativizing. Is that a word? Turning into a narrative? We'll go with it. I don't know if it's a real word, but we're gonna say that it is. It's a, you know what I mean. Narrativizing Lestat's abuse, Lestat's trauma. And that commodification without their consent being another thing that unites Lestat and Claudia. And it says in the captions, but my hands are dumb, and my mind is going dumb now too. I think it might be numb. It makes more sense to say my hands are numb. I think that what he's saying is, I'm trying to get this down, dear diary, but my hands are numb, and it's all going dumb in my mind too. So I think that's what he's saying is, and he looks from the diary page back to Bruce, holds up the diary page, and Bruce's face moves to obscure the diary page. His head completely covers the diary page by the end of that shot. He says crossed out new sentence, but the section of the page that we see does not include the actual crossed out line that he's referring to. So I cannot tell you how much of the line is crossed out because it is not shown on screen. The section of the page that we are looking at ends with friendly self.
In my mind, too, crossed out, new sentence.
Have that shot again of the light behind Lestat, the light between Lestat and Magnus. You know, that light moves from haloing Lestat to being between him and Magnus. You know, maybe it was the prayer that did that. You know, I mean, the light of God, you know, making a separation, the righteous light of God making a separation between him and his demons. Magnus says, you tipped over the collywobble shelf and took the sheet off the long table. We eat your soul at the long table. Which is totally like the dream of the twins, right? Oh, he says the long table. The first thing that comes to mind for me is that shot of the table in the opening sequence, that like table that we're always moving across, which I think we see first in Lestat's like family home. And then we also have the one in the woods. And then we have the one covered in like corpses and like dismembered bodies. So drawing a parallel there in those opening titles between Magnus's devouring of people and his family that he couldn't escape from, that he was trapped at. And then we might see that table referenced in a few other permutations throughout the season if the opening credits are any indication. And he says, we eat your soul at the long table. So the first things that I think is vampires drink blood, but the transformation of, you know, becoming a vampire is like eating your soul. You know, it takes away your humanity, your mortality. We, you know, he says, we eat your soul at the long table. The vampires. So you knocked over the collywobble shelf and took the cloth off the long table. We eat your soul at the long table.
Tipped over the collywobble shelf and took the cloth off the long table. We eat your soul at the long table. See?
And then we cut back to Lestat, you know, the vampire Lestat, who has this just delightful hatred in his eyes. This delightful smile, rageful smile. Look at that performance. Wow. Oh, look at that face. Giving great face. Truly. The mug, killing it. Killing the game, shot after shot. 68 courses so far. We keep waiting for the bill, but the plates keep coming. And we keep asking ourselves, when's he? The other thing that makes me think of is the fact that the scene opens with him saying more wine, offering Lestat that blood, which then Magnus goes to drink. If we're looking at this as like a vampire table, Lestat is in effect at the table at that point, being offered more wine, and the plates keep coming. We keep waiting for the bill, but the plates keep coming. The bill being like, you know, the things that you have to pay for the indulgence. You know, it's like keep waiting for judgment. Capital J, judgment. But the plates keep coming.
68 courses so far. We keep waiting for the bill, but the plates keep coming. And we keep asking ourselves when.
5-second shot, and then an 8-second shot. Oh my gosh. Wow. We're being really generous here. 8 seconds, you guys. Oh. A shot that's longer than 5 seconds? In my traumatic breakdown, wow, this is deluxe. And we keep asking ourselves, when's he going to make an album? So he's behind Lestat he tipped over the collywobble shelf and took the cloth off the long table. He's sitting next to Lestat for We Eat Your Soul at the long table. He's sitting behind Lestat again, and he is out of focus. You know, the focus is on Lestat. When he says 68 courses so far, we keep waiting for the bill, but the plates keep coming, and we keep asking ourselves, you know, they use keep 3 times in that sentence, you know, it feels very like, you know, no, that's a deliberate allusion to those who must be kept. Like, that is so specific and on purpose. It's that, and we keep asking ourselves, when's he going to make an album? He's sitting again beside Lestat.
Is he going to make an album?
And then he's behind Lestat again when Lestat screams, when we're ready. And the light is, again, between him and Magnus, and we have that close-up. We got a lens flare obscuring Lestat's face. You know, now the light is overtaking Lestat, you know. It's not, like, protecting him, it's obscuring him.
When we are ready!
11 frames of Lestat jerking the wheel hard. And then the car swerves back into the lane that he had been in. New shot! We have a new shot, you guys. Now we are seeing what is in front of him, swerving for a minute into oncoming traffic, and then gets back into his lane. You know, it's a, you know, we see this bright light ahead, the light of doom, but he swerves and avoids it. He's avoiding death all the time, but he is also avoiding God through avoiding death. You know, that God is unreachable. He is a vampire. He will never meet God on the other side because he will not die. In the Anne Rice world, I'm pretty sure that God and the devil are real. I don't know about in this show, but in the books, they are, I think, real. I haven't read Memnoch the Devil yet, but it's on my list. I would like to. And obviously, that doesn't mean anything for the show. The show has its own canon, which is separate from the books, contrary to the books at many points. We cut back to Bruce. Is this a new shot? It looks like a new shot to me. We are getting closer to Bruce, you know, or like that same shot as the medium close-up from before, but just like the camera person just moved closer, which we are still moving closer in on him, so that tracks. Bruce says she entertains a lot of little French folk with her death. I have wondered at various points while rewatching season 2 whether the line, "It's not a trial, it's a stoning," was originally supposed to be, "This isn't a trial, it's a lynching." Because the next line is, Louis says she really took the air out of the room with that one. And I've wondered if it was supposed to be, "It's not a trial, it's a lynching," but they wouldn't let them say that. And so they changed it to stoning, especially with the fact that, you know, the people that are on trial are 2 Black Americans, you know, being executed by a bunch of white people in front of a white crowd. I only say that because, you know, because he is commenting on her death, saying she entertains a lot of little French folk with her death. It is a medium close-up. We see some boxes behind him. We are seeing the side of his face that's in shadows. There's another light on the left side. We're seeing, you know, on our right, the right side of the frame, we're seeing, you know, the shadows on his face. Left side of the frame, you know, there's a light that's hitting his face, lighting up his shirt. You know, we have that one warm interrogation bulb behind him.
There's a lot of little French folks with her.
And then we cut to, is this a new shot as well? Yo, new shot! I think that this was probably the same take where they were looking at his hand, taking it out of the bag, and they probably just like panned up or tilted up to his face. Regardless, new shot. Louis is being lit. You know, the side of his face that we're seeing is almost entirely in shadows. All we can see is his eye. And then the other side of his face is, you know, is lit with that cool toned light. We are seeing, you know, the side of him that is shadows, you know, we see when Bruce talks about Claudia's death. We have an over-the-shoulder shot of Bruce. So we're looking down, we're seeing Louis' perspective on Bruce, and he says, "I didn't do nothing that bad to her, Daddy Lou."
I do nothing that bad to her, Daddy.
We cut back from a close-up, which the last shot had been a close-up, to a medium shot, we'll call it, where he stands up and smacks the hell out of Bruce. We cut back to where the slap lands. Bruce's mouth fills with blood.
Guess I don't have.
And cut back to that medium shot of Louis. Louis crosses his legs. And again, we see, Lestat's body behind Louis. We see the pages with the highlight. We see that bright light behind him. This is a 9-second shot. That's crazy. 9-second shots. And he says,
Guess I don't have to tell you, dear diary, what it's like to have a person crack your spine, open you up, and shove a pencil inside you.
He says that. And then we cut back to Magnus says, very odd company at the long table. We cut back to that shot that I love of the rear view mirror with the artificial Dutch angle. Here we see individual lights in front of him and then a collective kind of brighter light behind. And considering that we have 3 corpses in that rear view mirror, it makes me think of like those little lights. It makes me think of like people's soul passing by, like the individual souls that are going by, and then in the back like the kingdom of heaven type of thing. The souls, especially because the lights are going towards that like bright light behind it, and the bright light behind the corpses. Like the bright light is behind the corpses and like above them. So it reminds me of kind of like a light of heaven and like the light of those, souls going into that. Are they saying like the very odd company are the corpses? That's what I would assume would be the implication. But he said, we eat your soul at the long table. So are the corpses also part of that we that eat your soul at the long table? Or are the corpses the food at the long table, which, the vampires would be draining?
Very odd company.
Very odd company at the long table. And then we cut back to Lestat. That shot of Lestat through the glass. Very odd company at the long table. But when he says at the long table, it cuts back to Lestat. The corpses are the plates. They are the courses. And he, Lestat, the former victim, is now the very odd company at the long table. He is part of that company because we cut back to him when he says at the long table. Again, we have that light in Lestat's eyes. The light in Lestat's eyes, which begins to dim towards the end of the shot.
At the long table.
They say very odd company at the long table, and then he says a hand, and then he reaches a hand out towards Lestat. A close-up of Lestat out of focus, medium close-up of Magnus in focus.
A hand.
The hands of the corpses reaching for him and grabbing his head, the memory of it, the victims, but also if those are the corpses and Lestat is now sitting at the long table, then it also gives the vibe of like not only the people that he has witnessed die, but also the people that he has killed. We start the episode with him killing people, those corpses reaching back out for him, the corpses that he could have become and now creates more of. Lestat's breathing, very loud. And then we see Magnus's fingers stroking Lestat's arm. And then he kind of sets this finger down, a hand, a finger, as the world passes them by and they are enclosed in that car, enclosed off from the world. We see all of these hands stroking Lestat's face, and he takes his hand off the wheel and instead reaches for those hands that are grabbing at him. Those hands of the corpses reaching for him, either the corpses in the tower, the corpses that he could have been, the, corpses that he creates. Takes his hand off the wheel, takes his hand off of, he is in the driver's seat of his life, takes his hand off of the steering to reach for them. A drummer? He said a drummer. Is Tough Cookie gonna become a vampire? Are there any that we have met so far that are already vampires? It's the only drummer that we know of is Tough Cookie, right?
A drummer. No. A pimp.
And then we have this shot. This is the other one that I was really thinking about when I mentioned continuity editing at the top of this. Do you remember when I mentioned that back this morning before I went to work? Because we cut from this shot of him reaching for these hands, trying to push them off of his face, to him laughing as the world passes him by, kind of laugh crying, but laughing nonetheless as the world passes him by. You see the light on his face passing into shadows. And then we cut back to, you know, these hands. We see him in profile, these hands, you know, again, reaching for him. A finger going towards his mouth. He's trying to push them away. Hands grabbing at his shoulders as he is trying to reach back for the wheel, trying to take control back over his life, trying to be in control, trying to be in the driver's seat of his life whilst these hands reach back for him. And it reminds me of the shot of him in episode 1 during Long Face in the concert with him crowd surfing on the hands of all of his fans, all of the people that love him, being celebrated by it. And now, you know, these hands of these corpses, all of the people, you know, the corpses that he could have become, all of the people that he has killed, reaching back from the void to grab him. And I would include amongst that number Claudia, because he let her die. And I think that one of the things that this scene does very effectively is implicate Lestat while showing his abuse. Very odd company at the long table. A hand, a finger, a drummer, you, a pimp, mommy, Claudia. So, table of vampires. So yes, those corpses being the courses served at the long table, all of the company that he has created at the long table. He is one of the people there, and the people that he has led there, including his daughter, who he let die. And then we cut from those hands reaching out for him to a shot with the focus on Magnus in the shadows, and then rack focus to Lestat. God, what a performance. Sorry, oh my gosh, that look of anguish in Sam's eyes. Perfection, incredible. Oh, this is the best Dude, his performance this episode, legitimately the best acting performance I've ever seen. Like, the best performance I've ever seen. Like, and I was talking with my friend, and we were talking about, like, some of our favorite performances, acting performances of all time. And we were both like, no, it's the best we've ever seen. It's amazing. Oh my gosh. And I thought that Roland Jones was exaggerating when he, you know, said, like, when he said that, you know, Sam Reed was giving, like, the performance of all time. And, like, you know, every director will be like, oh, my actors gave an amazing performance. But no, he was being so serious, because what? Dude, that performance is insane. It was amazing. It was incredible. Like, this episode, insane. So, yeah, a rack close-up from Magnus to Lestat. The light is behind him on the right side, and then we get light on his face again as we zoom in to a closer close-up of Lestat's face, looking pained. I would describe that as pained. Louis says, and I fought him. Over the shot of Lestat, Magnus says Claudia. Magnus being like the devil on Lestat's shoulder, you know, the voice of Lestat's inner predation. And, you know, that light on Lestat's face as Louis reads out, and I fought him, you know, fighting that inner demon. But, of course, Lestat still turned Claudia. He still, you know, allowed her to suffer the way that she did over the course of her life, both, you know, failing her as, like, turning her against her will, and then failing her as a father, and then allowing her to die and not getting in the way of that.
Claudia.
And I fought him.
We have that shot of Louis. He says, even with my broken arm, and then my re-broken arm. On that shot of Louis, that 4-second shot, the camera moves this way.
Even with my broken arm, and then my re-broken arm.
And then we have, you know, a shot of Bruce, his jaw. The camera moves this way.
But even still.
The next shot of Louis, the camera is moving down. We're seeing Louis loom more and more above us, further and further above us. But even still, all the bad things happen that bad men do. And I mean, I really would like to, for just a moment, stitch together Magnus's line and Louis reading Claudia's diary right there, because I want to see if that does anything. Very odd company at the long table. A hand, a finger, a drummer, a pimp, you, mommy, Claudia. But I fought him, even with my broken arm and then my re-broken arm. But even still, all the bad things happened that bad men do.
All the bad things happen that bad men do.
This is the part of the video where I started dissociating a little bit more, just because I had been working on it for 3 to 4 hours at this point, and some of the, imagery when you're looking again and again and again, not graphic, but, psychologically intense. So my volume gets a little bit lower and my tone gets a little bit deeper. There was one point where I did just go back and replace the audio because I didn't think that it was audible, but I think for the most part it's usable. I do go through the entire scene. The volume, unfortunately, the audio gets a little bit harder to understand. Then we cut to Magnus, of course, one of the bad men doing the bad things the bad men do. And we now do not have the audio from those tower scenes. Magnus is saying something, but we do not know what he is saying. Lestat is struggling. We cannot hear his struggles. Claudia's words about Bruce, which plays under Magnus being on top of Lestat. It looks to me like Magnus is taking some of Lestat's blonde hair in his hand and holding up the curls. Both of the shots of Magnus, it's a low angle, so we're looking up at Magnus.
He had my legs.
And then we cut to him, with his hand flat on Lestat's head. We have another Dutch angle here of Lestat on the floor, Magnus above him, crooked window, the tilting. The shot turns even more. The world is becoming even more off balance, off kilter as it goes on. Literally tilting, twisting. Lestat bangs on the ground, reaches for the planks perhaps, a torch burning in the back.
Pulled apart, and my dress.
And then cut back to Magnus, Magnus's hand on Lestat's head. When we pan down to Lestat, we are at eye level. We are on the floor with Lestat being pinned down by Magnus. As much as Claudia's words are being appropriated over the video of the abuse inflicted onto her abuser, Lestat is also, being silenced by that action. We don't hear the words that he speaks. We see him speak something, but we don't know what it is. The audio that plays over the top is...
He had my legs pulled apart and my dress pulled up around my waist.
Is that, and then we cut back to Louis. Louis using Claudia's words to describe the assault that Claudia went through.
Stuffed full, too wet feeling down there.
While Magnus pulls the shirt away from Lestat's neck, we pan from a close-up on Magnus's hand up to a close-up on Magnus. We are looking up at Magnus. Magnus is in shadows. The light is catching Lestat's shirt and his skin. And then Magnus leans down and bites. And then we are on the floorboards again with Lestat. Talking about the feeling of being soiled, of being unclean, literally as Magnus bites into him.
Like I was packed with dirt. And I hope.
Again, we are looking up at Louis here. Louis is towering over us.
One day he feels this. Small and cornered and crushed like a can.
We are on the floor with Lestat. So we are beneath Louis, on the floor with Lestat, and hovering a bit over Bruce. And Bruce laughs when he hears about how Claudia felt.
But then there were the parts.
Where he brought home kills, and I sat with him and ate. Behind Louis, we have the TV. You know, another vehicle of commodification, another vehicle of storytelling. The medium which this program is, television. The TV is watching them this time.
Where he brought home kills. And I sat with him and ate.
And Bruce is still laughing, you know, he doesn't give a shit, he's enjoying it. Hearing the misery that he inflicted onto this girl.
I just said.
And Louis is saying, I just told him what he wanted to hear. Louis is pointing at Bruce, but I think that the finger is pointing back at himself. I think that, you know, everything that Louis is doing is just what Louis wants to believe that the situation is. He doesn't want to look at what he is actively doing or what he has done in the past. He just wants to, you know, blame everything on Bruce. But the only person in this situation that is hurting Claudia was Bruce. But, I mean, look at the material.
What he wanted to hear.
And then we cut to Magnus, his mouth filled with Lestat's blood after draining Lestat to the point of death. And then we cut to Magnus wearing the Vampire Lestat t-shirt, leaning next to Lestat and telling him, ask for it, child. We see again the world moving past. We see there's a light in Magnus's eyes, the light emanating from Lestat. I just told him what he wanted to hear. And Magnus says, ask for it, child. You know, what Magnus wanted to hear was he wanted to hear Lestat ask for it.
Ask for it, child.
It ain't easy to like myself because of it. Claudia did say what Bruce wanted to hear. Lestat does, from what we see, doesn't say what Magnus wanted to hear.
It ain't easy to like myself because of it.
But then we have this shot. Our first crossfade of the sequence. I think there are a few. I think there might be 3. Our first crossfade of the sequence, as we are outside of the car window. We're watching the world rush by in front of Lestat. Magnus's hand reaches around to Lestat's lips. Lestat looks back towards Magnus, and it looks to me like his mouth opens. It looks to me that when Magnus sets his finger on Lestat's lips, Lestat parts his lips. That's what it looks like to me. You know, after Claudia's saying, I just said what he wanted to hear. But of course, this Magnus that's in the car with Lestat is not actually Magnus. This is the version of Magnus which exists within Lestat's psyche. It is Lestat's bloodlust incarnate, personified as Magnus. That Lestat, that bloodlust reaches around to Lestat's lips and Lestat opens his mouth. Claudia's words say, it ain't easy to like myself because of it. Lestat opens his lips to that finger, the apple, the temptation, you know, apples with a hint of cowardice. Oh, and over the top of that shot, Magnus says, all the light's gone out of your blue eyes. Dude, the politics of that crossfade is crazy. Literally last episode, I was looking at the ways in which all of the different aspects of the language of film were all working together to strip Lestat of his agency in the narrative. And so the scene with Lestat and Magnus just comes across differently because in the source material, Lestat is a character who, like, is always a fighter and always fights. In the show, Lestat, he's been established in prior episodes. The decisions, the major decisions of his life, like going out to kill the wolves, were influenced by his mother. And so here we have, like, the one moment so far that we've seen in his life where he goes against that, where an authority figure tells him ask for it and he says no, and it doesn't matter. Like, is that accurate to real life? I mean, yes, but it is, that is so bleak. And then even in the present, and then the politics of in the present tense, him opening his lips to it, that he has given up that one fight, that he was the only fight against, you know, that he was willing to take on, but he lost it. and now he's given it up. That shot, by the way, of him like opening his lips, I do think is like one of the most interesting shots, like psychologically, in the whole sequence. It's super, super interesting to me, but the politics are crazy.
Oh, the light's gone out of your blue.
And we crossfade from Lestat opening his lips to Magnus. Lestat remembering being on the floor, looking up at Magnus, with the light having gone out of his blue eyes. Now he opens his lips, you know, and those two images superimposed onto each other.
Light's gone out of your blue eyes.
I even once felt a twinge of something nice.
We have a low angle of Magnus. We are looking up at Magnus. Magnus is lit a little bit, you know, there's a light a little bit to the right side of the frame. It's the torch lit by the light of the fire. Should I go back through once I do this and do like just a fire run? Reanalyzing the scene, but only looking at the fire. It comes up only a few times.
If all the summer days are gone.
You see Lestat on the floor, lit by the fire, blood covering his neck, and he says no.
And not the
Louis says, and not the worst thing ever.
worst thing ever.
And then Magnus slits his throat with a nail. We see the fire flickering beside him. The blood pouring onto Lestat's lips. He screams, no. It's a close-up of Lestat's face. It's a high angle, so we are no longer on the floor with him. We are now looking down at Lestat the way that Magnus is looking down on Lestat. Him in the car, screaming no. The light behind him, haloing him. The light on his face, the light of God, the light of death maybe. And then cut to him being engulfed by blood. Bright light on the floorboard behind him. It makes it kind of look gold. It kind of reminds me of those like old like wooden church paintings that were like done on wood, but the wood was painted gold, and then you would have like, you know, images of Jesus, and like the blood would really be like really striking against the gold. That's kind of what this frame looks like to me. The floorboards reflecting gold. There's something very church-like about it, especially as, you know, we cut from that shot of Lestat facing the bright light, the light of God, the light of fate, the light of death, and then we cut to this, you know, the floorboards, a kind of a perversion of Catholic imagery, because, you know, the holy figure saying, drink my blood. Lestat would be the representation of the blood-covered holy thing on the gold-painted wood. But instead of, you know, him being Jesus, the one who's saying, drink my blood, he is instead being forced to drink the blood of Magnus, which is the blood that, you know, damns him, that turns him into a vampire. We have a shot of Magnus holding Lestat down, bleeding over his mouth, crossfade into our second crossfade, a close-up of Lestat behind the wheel, crying, screaming no, as you see the headlights behind him, again that light overtaking him a little bit in the shot. Over the top of that, Louis says he let me go because I seemed small and it looked like he won, and he did win. And we have that playing over the top of the visual of Lestat screaming. We don't hear the audio of his scream, but we see the visual of his scream because it looked like he won. And he did win, and that being superimposed over Lestat, who is a vampire now. And the first thing that I think is that shot of Lestat in the driver's seat when Magnus's finger touches Lestat's lips and he opens his lips. You know, that Lestat has given into that bloodlust that Magnus represents. He has given into that. He has become the vampire Lestat. You know, Magnus's victory isn't in turning Lestat into a vampire. Magnus's victory is in Lestat embracing his vampirism the way that he did. Turning Lestat not into a vampire, but into a predator. You know, we eat your soul at the long table. Odd company at the long table. A hand, a finger, a drummer, a pimp, You?
He let me go because I seemed small, and it looked like he'd won. And he did win.
Shot of Louis saying, "Cause I want nothing to be nothing."
Because I want nothing to be nothing.
And then a shot of Lestat lit by the light of the fire. This is the shot that reminds me of the finale of season 1, where Lestat had his throat slit and his eyes are dancing around, and he's wearing white with his neck soaked in blood. But that being an attempted murder, and this being him being born into his vampire existence. So I want nothing to be nothing and say nothing and do nothing.
And say nothing and do nothing.
You know what's stupidest of all, dear diary? And we cut back to Louis, looking up at Louis.
You know what's stupidest of all, dear diary?
The clip of Lestat is again muted. We see that light behind him engulfing him again, as it says, "I thought I was the thing in the shadows." The bigger evils in the world. The bigger evils.
I thought I was the thing lurking in the shadows. I thought I was.
We have an extreme close-up of Lestat's mouth as he screams, which lasts for 16 frames, 14 frames of him jerking the wheel, 11 frames of the car switching lane, and then we see that light of God again, that light of God coming towards Lestat, but in fact it is not. The light of God is the headlights of a car, and Lestat is getting into a car crash. Lestat is being T-boned, the car is flipping over. We have a shot of that from the front, we have a shot of that from the side. As you see the light go past the window, the impact, glass break. Cut back to Louis, close-up of Louis, medium close-up. Louis looks away, says that's it.
That's it.
Bruce finally looks a little bit sad. I don't know, maybe he's just sad that it's over. He looked like he was enjoying himself pretty much the entire time. I don't know if it was, Claudia saying that she thought she was the thing in the shadows that actually makes Bruce sad, or if he's just sad that it's over, or if he knows that now Louis is going to kill him and he's sad that he's going to die. Either way, he's not laughing now. Not laughing as Louis stands with images of Lestat all behind him. As he lights the pages on fire, and, we're looking up at Louis. It's a low angle. Louis towers over us. There are boards of the ceiling. Behind you see, the red lettering on the wall, fragments of the Armand Told the Truth. As he burns the diary pages, and that is a 4-second shot. And then a 1-second shot of him setting it on top of Bruce's head. The fire goes down onto Bruce's clothes. And then we cut back to Louis and zoom in onto Louis' face. 6 seconds as Louis looks, nods, turns. We cut to black and Bruce's scream fades out. Yeah? Did we do it? Did we get it? That didn't take as long as I thought it was going to.